Time to get this thing underway. So, President Dutton of the First Security Bank approached me a month ago or so about possibly putting on a seminar on how to avoid scams. This is something that we're seeing a lot of in our community. President Dutton, Chairman, CEO Harper, they're like $100,000 already this year, maybe. People who have been ripped off in our community. And so it's prevalent. The reason these people are doing it, they're getting rich doing it. And really glad to introduce Mr. Fanning, who is with the Assistant AG, the Attorney General's Office, and Mr. Benson, he's with DCI. That's what they do, the prosecutor and the investigator. They know much more about this. I do, at some point, we'll talk about some things I've seen in our community, but I'll turn it over to them.
Okay, my name's Mike Fanning, and I've been a lawyer for a long time. And I've been a prosecutor and in private practice. I've represented criminal defendants. I've represented the state for years. I've done about everything. A couple years ago, 3 years ago, there was some ARPA money available to Adult Protective Services. And they said, here's money, use it for some elders function, some purpose. And Adult Protective Services is more of a civil investigative office. That's going to be annoying. And they wanted a prosecutor and they wanted an investigator, and it was a poor fit with an agency like that. So they came to DOJ and said, if we give you money, will you give us a prosecutor and an investigator dedicated to elder justice issues? And by that, I mean exploitation, neglect, and abuse of elders or adults with particular vulnerabilities. And that's how this job was created. And so when that job came open, I dumped everything that I'd done before and I said, I want that. That's going to be the capstone of my career because I'm just over the horizon from retirement, and this is what I want to do. And so I started about 2.5 years ago, and Chris came on board September 26th of 2022, so just at his anniversary, and that's what we do. That's what we do. Say something, Chris.
My name's Chris Benson. I'm with Department of Justice, Division of Criminal Investigation. I started my law enforcement patrol career in 2000, so I have 24 years experience. I spent about 5 years patrol, and then the rest I got moved into investigations. And so I've done about 16, 17, 18 years of investigations, and then moved back to Montana. When they opened this position, I thought that would be a great position to do something different than what I had always done. And so applied, and here we are.
And the point is, this problem is among us. This problem is here. And we're not talking about some academic exercise from over yonder. We're not talking about those poor people in Missouri. We're talking about yourselves and your neighbors, your family.
And nobody is immune from it. I myself have received information on part of a scam, email and text message and phone calls that have said, you are subject to arrest. No, I'm not.
Yeah, betcha. So anyways, go to the next slide. And what I've done here is thrown up statistics because it's really not a PowerPoint unless you burden some people with statistics. So here's your dose of that. This is from something called the Internet Crime Complaint Center, which is some sort of unit within the FBI. And they pretty much do what the name implies. And all I want you to see is those bar graphs keep moving, keep growing. The amount and the numbers of people are not going backwards. And that's what this is about, is to stop that advance and start trying to fight back against the frauds.
And at this point, I believe, I spoke with my brother-in-law last night, and he said that number has grown even more than what it is now.
Yeah, it's not going to get back or go backwards until we change it. Okay.
One of the interesting things on that graph to me
Yeah.
is how much the losses have grown and how little the complaints have grown.
Mm-hmm.
That is an interesting observation. But here's the thing about that that's probably deceptive, because the gray bar is the reports. Now, I don't believe that that's accurate, and we'll get to why. So go ahead. And who is it? I mean, across the population, who tends to be victimized? Everybody. Everybody. 20-somethings, young people, midlife. But the older you get, the greater those numbers are, both in terms of incidence and in terms of loss. And you're going to find other statistics that would be a little bit different than this, but the trend is what I'm trying to convince you of. It's growing, and it's worse the older you are. Okay. Now, my friends at the AARP supplied this. And it's just more startling statistics, but the middle one says it's your friends, your family, and your caregivers are most likely to exploit from you. That's not exactly today's topics, more scams by strangers. And then the other thing is, there's lots and lots of money stolen, and almost none of it is reported. And one of the things that I want to accomplish today is to convince people of the need to report. A couple of reasons. We might not be able to get the money back, but we have to know what the problem is. Because if I'm going to convince the legislature to give me somebody besides just one investigator, they've got to say, yes, this is a burdensome problem all across our state. Or if APS needs staff, they won't get it unless we understand the breadth of the problem.
And there are a couple of sites that we'll get into later, addresses to show you where you can report some of these scams to. And the reason for is they track these scams and what the new ones are, what the trends are, what the new ones are that they haven't come up with yet.
Okay. Sheriff? So, we're talking about nationwide statistics and all of this stuff that's hard to get your mind around. But is it a problem in Montana? And we kind of already established that it was. We sort of gave that away. But go ahead. The Crime Complaint Center from the FBI tracks this stuff and apportions it per capita among states. Why is Montana 7th in the nation? We don't want to be leading any of those categories. We don't want to be top 10 in any of this. But for some reason, Montana tends to be victimized more than most of the other states. Okay? One of the reasons is Montana's population is older than every state west of the Mississippi. We tend to be older, and we tend to be getting older more rapidly. And it's a cruel fact that older people are more likely to be victims of scams and exploitations than others. I'm not saying that other people are not victimized, but we're just talking about raw data. The older you are, the more likely it is that you will be victimized.
Because
I am so glad you asked that question. It's like she's on the payroll.
Right.
Okay, we'll get to that. There's one more statistic. This is called a population pyramid, and it's men on the blue left and women on the yellow right. And you would kind of imagine the numbers of people would tend to get smaller the older they got. And yet you see that bubble here, you can't read it from where you're at, but 55 to 59 jumps up, 60 to 64 jumps up more, then it goes back in a little bit, 65 to 69. What is that? Think about it. You know what that group of people represents.
Baby boomers, retirees.
It's the baby boomers, the retirees. And so, now we've got this bubble of greater population creeping up. And we know that the older that you are, the more prone you are to exploitation. So what's that going to tell us? As those people continue up that pyramid, the incidence of crime in Montana against the elderly is only going to go up. Next question. More of the same. This is DPHHS's Adult Protective Services data. That bulge is from 69 to 89. Lots of people get victimized. Those people get victimized more. 1 in 10, according to the New England Journal of Medicine, will be victimized at some point in their life. Okay, now we're building to this. I just like to add this, since we do this, and this is not particularly the topic for tonight. But Adult Protective Services investigates abuse, neglect, and exploitation. And you look at this pie graph and you see they're roughly equal. Roughly equal. The exploitations are the biggest at 38%. How many abuse or neglect cases do we have pending right now?
Maybe one. The majority of what we see is exploitation. The majority of what is reported to us are exploitation cases. The majority of cases that are either abuse or neglect may go to local agencies, but the majority of what we see are the exploitation and scam.
What I'm trying to say here is those cases get reported to Adult Protective Services. They don't make it through law enforcement to prosecutors. Why? I can't say for sure, but that's wrong. That's deeply, deeply flawed. There's something wrong with our system. I'm just tossing that out there because it's a pet peeve of mine. But now we're going to go back to our scam issue. Okay. That just shows that more elderly people are victimized than people with other limitations. Go ahead. The answer to your question. We could sit here amongst ourselves and ponder this and say, why do you suppose it is that elderly people get victimized more than anybody else? And we would come up with most of that list. There's a generational trust.
A big reason that we've seen at the bank is because they just want someone to talk to. And these people become your friends, and they love to sit and talk to them on the phone because they don't have anyone else to talk to.
Yeah. Isolation. If somebody's isolated, they're bored, they haven't had any human contact for a while, and they get a call, even if it's somebody who's up to bad, they're going to say, well, at least it's some human that I can speak with. And then that's the opening that those scammers need to continue and to develop some sort of false trust. So that thing. Admittedly, some elders are dealing with cognitive decline, making them more susceptible to frauds, which is not to say that happens only to people with decline. It can happen to very, very sophisticated people, fully in control of their faculties, and they just get outmaneuvered by somebody who's a pro. Okay. Dependence on others. A lot of times when you're dependent on somebody else, oops, you back me up, please. You're willing to tolerate something. So, for example, if you have a caregiver and that caregiver seems to be lifting from your wallet, you have to make a decision. I report this person and I have no caregiver, and then what are my alternatives? Living alone, which I can't do. Going to retirement or nursing home, which may be intolerable. So maybe you just grit your teeth and you take it. Maybe you put up with that loser son who is stealing from you, but at least will take you to the doctor when you need to go, or go buy groceries. So a lot of times it's circumstantial to say, I'm willing to tolerate this just because the alternative is just intolerable. Mm-hmm. Well, anyways, all of that stuff contributes to the why. But I think the biggest why isn't in that left panel. The biggest why is in the right panel. 1 in 24 cases by some experts' estimation gets reported. In other words, 23 go unreported. And as a criminal or as a betting man, are you going to take 95, 96% odds? That's a pretty good deal. You show me that investment, I'll take it. And why aren't they reported?
For the shame or embarrassment of being taken advantage of. Maybe a guilt. Maybe it's a family member and you don't want to turn them in. I dealt with in the past a lot of what you talked about with pain medication. It's a family member, a child, a grandchild, or something like that taking pain medications, and they didn't want to turn them in because it was family related. And they figured that they could help them or deal with it themselves.
And then the other thing is what we talked about before, loss of independence. But the other one that's a big deal, and it's a real problem for Chris as an investigator and for me as a prosecutor, is denial. People oftentimes determinedly refuse to admit that they got taken. Like, describe the the Publishers Clearinghouse?
He didn't want to admit that he had been taken advantage of and been taken for quite a bit of money. It was a gentleman I talked to down in the southwest part of the state. He wouldn't admit to me, even though we knew what was going on and knew that he was being taken advantage of by people out of the state, but he just didn't want to admit it.
Yeah, and to admit it would be to acknowledge to his wife, I just threw away $80,000 of our money, and we're not getting it back. How could you admit that to yourself? How can you admit that to a loved one? That is a difficult thing. Okay, yeah, I'm upset too. Okay. So now we're going to talk about scams, which is really the heart of this discussion. And throughout it, you will hear the same things played over and over and over. And these people are experts at manipulating common human traits: fear and love. And they do that by demanding something with urgency or immediacy that makes you act on impulse or react rather than thoughtfully process something. So, the government impersonator scam will threaten arrest. Or some business scams will threaten to cut off your power. They will ask for money now, and they're going to ask for money in ways that you are unaccustomed to paying it. And that will be gift cards, wire transfers, or cryptocurrency, typically, because it's irretrievable and virtually untraceable. So those are the things that you have to leave here with. Urgency, playing on fears or emotion, and pay now and pay in ways that they direct you to pay.
So for example, we have like the Verizon one going around where you get the text from Verizon for say that your bill's overdue, which, you know, some are, I guess some aren't, but like, you know, the urgency of your cell phone's gonna get cut off if you don't pay now, you know, or let's get this caught up and such. And so that's their phishing way of just trying to get your credit card information, debit card, account information that way to quickly pay it so your phone doesn't get cut off. Because, you know, a lot of people, that's all they have now are cell phones. So we have seen that too. And it's crazy how that happened. And they submitted their information, but then at the same time, their phone still, I don't know how it happens, but went off. So it became a whole trickle down thing. They gotten themselves in a big old ring of how do I even get my money back, get my cell phones back, to now prove to Verizon, you know, that this is me and all that, because the security questions had gotten compromised and all that. So they had gotten into their Verizon account to access their account to have all this happen.
And some of these may look really real to you because they may show your a picture of your home. They may have your address listed on the email, and they may have your phone number. Understand, all of that is public information, and all of that is on the internet already. And so they'll take that information as well as Facebook stuff, information or photos, and put that out there and say, if you don't do this, if you don't scan this QR code and send us $2,000 in cryptocurrency, we're going to do something to you. And it's how they get that information. It's all public information on the internet.
And I'm going to absolutely guarantee you some things here. I promise you this. Law enforcement is never going to call you and tell you that you have a warrant. It's not going to happen. And law enforcement does not accept cash. Like, you send me cash bond, maybe if you're doing it person to person at the sheriff's office, but you're not going to send it through the mail to Boston. It's just, you don't do that. If they ask for a gift card, it's a scam. If they ask for cash, it's a scam. And if the biggest thing is they always rush these people. These people don't have time to think, and that's the key to it, is that they can't let you think. So If they're hurrying you and say, you've only got 25 minutes to get this money in, or you don't win the lottery, it's a scam. And always, if it feels like it's too good to be true, it is, and 100%. So please, the problem, and as Mr. Fanning is going to tell you pretty quick here, the second you send, it's done. I can't get it back. He can't get it back. None of us can get it back. It's going to Western Africa. It's going to
Right,
Southeast
yeah.
Asia. It's gone. And it doesn't matter how much it is. It's gone.
Okay, that's the generality. Let's look at a couple specific types of scams, and we kind of hinted at that. Go ahead. The law enforcement scams we've already talked about. Failed to appear for jury duty, going to be arrested, and by paying this in gift cards, you're not going to get arrested. Will not happen.
My mother was a victim of this. They called her and told her that she had a warrant for arrest, and if she didn't, because she didn't show up. And so the first thing she did was called me and said, they told me that they were going to arrest me. Am I going to get arrested? Mom, you're not going to get arrested. They don't call you. They don't call you beforehand. They'll just knock on the door. And if you haven't received a knock on a door, have you been requested for jury duty? No. Then that explains it.
Okay. Go ahead.
Those of you who haven't filled out your jury list.
Yeah, you do have to do that. You do. Yeah, they will encourage you to do your civic duty. Yes. Okay. This is a woman, a dear, dear woman named Susan Bivens. She's from Anaconda. She was a registered nurse. She was in hospital administration. She's educated. She's bright. She's capable. She came to Anaconda because her son moved there, and that's where the grandchild was, so that's where Susan went. And Susan was, I wouldn't say well-to-do, but she was comfortable. She had a beautiful home, and she liked to travel, and she had enough cash to do that. And I said past tense. She had enough. She doesn't anymore. What happened was she had a call and said, this is Amazon. There's been some unusual activity. And that, I think that was probably actually true. Then she got another call from Amazon, but this was just the setup. Looks like there's been some unusual activity. Did you purchase these things? No, I didn't. We got a scam here. We better transfer you to somebody else. And then there's this shuffle. And these guys are all working together. And so before you know it, she goes from Amazon to the Federal Trade Commission to somebody who's reportedly with the DEA. And this DEA person contacts her. And Susan, she's first alarmed that her data's been compromised, and then second, she's alarmed that there's a law enforcement officer speaking to her. And not only is he speaking to her, but he's accusing her of being complicit in some big ring of money laundering, and she's subject to arrest. Oh yeah, that's the part where they frighten you. That's the part where they frighten you. Mark that. So, and then the DEA agent says, now, you may not speak of this to anybody because that will compromise our investigation. So you have to keep mum. Don't talk to your family. Don't talk to local law enforcement. Keep silent and cooperate. And she just did it. So I'll go ahead in the next slide. So she was told not to contact anybody, and she did it. Grave mistake. The first thing you need in a crisis is support. And the last thing that they want is for you to have support. So go ahead. So she never told anybody until it was too late. Well, let's go on. So Susan, she's thinking, I want some sort of authentication. I want some evidence from you to suggest that you are who you claim you are. And some dude named Randall Jenkins sent that thing. Department of Investigation? What is that? Well, there's nothing. It's entirely made up.
What was funny is when we were speaking with her and she was telling us about this, Mike asked, can you send us a photocopy or a copy of what this looks like, what he sent you? His credentials. This is what he got through the email. And he showed it to me, and the first thing I said was, what's your next? X-Files. That was my favorite show watching, and I said, I know that badge. I've seen it.
So you can't see it, but the text on this bottom part is basically duplicated. There's little differences here and there that were just photoshopped in, but it doesn't even make any sense.
And part of the why I knew that is during my investigation career, I was assigned to the FBI for 15 years. And I knew what their badges looked like. I knew what their credentials looked like. So I knew that when he showed me that photo, that's not it. I know what they look like.
So, besides the fear, they will give you some effort at authenticity, something to suggest to you that they are who they claim to are. And this was just entirely bogus. Okay, next. What they did was they wrapped Susan around the axle by scaring the bejesus out of her. And then after a few weeks, they said, oh, and by the way, somehow or other this guy was tracking her because he knew when she left town. And whether they planted something on her phone, I don't know, but it frightened her deeply. She left town and said, where are you going? What's your objective? Who have you been talking to? So she was scared to death. But then after a period of time, this Randall Jenkins clown called her up and said, we have absolved you. We no longer believe that you are part of the money laundering scam. However, we do know that somebody has taken your identification and they're opening accounts across the country using your information. It could be somebody close to you. You may not speak of this to anyone, not your family, not your clergy, not anybody, not law enforcement certainly. And they said, what we're going to do now is take all of your money and put it in something called a Treasury Secure Locker. It's made up. There's no such thing. But we are going to pay you back in a Treasury check when this is all cleared up. And that's a copy of the check.
And part of this, as you look at it, that you can see her name, her first name and middle name were spelled different, were wrong. That was one of the things that she noticed right offhand. And it should have been a red flag for her, but she didn't think of it. Maybe they just got my name wrong. There were some other things that we found out too that were different on this check.
Yeah, so it's just a photocopied check. So, but in that kind of a moment, nobody does that analysis. Nobody sees that they've just been given an X-Files credential. Nobody sees they've been given a phonied up check. And then, if that weren't bad enough, he said, okay, we've gotten all your money from your savings and checking accounts secure. If you got retirement, we need to get that too. And so she dutifully gave the checks. Keep going. How? Money cards. Do not pay in money cards, gift cards, all that sort of thing. But she did. Why? Accessible, non-traceable, unrecoverable. And she went to, I think it was the Walmart in Anaconda, and was getting $5,000 at a crack. And nobody said a word. And that's where merchants have a responsibility to say, what's our part in this? Why, in the name of everything sensible, are you getting this fantastic amount of money in gift cards? So, nobody did.
And that's the advantage of like small town here, that, obviously is happening probably in both Cassie, and our institute, that within the community here, that large amounts of gift cards were being purchased at a certain time and such, and just to communicate that with all the merchants and stuff like that, just to, go over it with your employees again. Because you want to trust that we live in a small town, but we have to take care of each other too that way.
So,
Yeah.
On the same token, the tellers in the bank start asking you questions about what this transaction is.
Right.
It's not because we're trying to get our nose in your business, we're trying to protect your dollars. The tellers in these banks see hundreds of transactions a day. They've seen these transactions, they know what they look like. If they start questioning what you're doing, it's because they think there's something wrong here and they're trying to help you keep your money in the bank and not in somebody else's account.
Exactly, thanks.
Ms. Harper told me this was a new one to me. They'll actually tell you when you go get $10,000 cash, tell the banker that it's a car loan. You're buying a car. That's what they've been.
Yeah, they give you a script to tell the bank what it's
If
for.
somebody is telling you what to tell your bank, it should be fireworks should be going off all over the place. That is something is amiss. But also what I have seen, and back to what Mr. Dutton was talking about, is that when you are in the scam, when you are the person being scammed, it's right here and you cannot see it. So the stopgaps of the bank tellers, if they're not trying to run you off, they're not trying to make you go somewhere else. They are being cautious for you because, like I said, they all see it. And they know it. They know what they're seeing. They've seen people in our community I personally know of, went to Valley, they withdrew they withdrew $9,000 one first day and $10,000 the next day. And they overnighted it because their grandson was in jail and they needed the money. And then, of course, they told her, the grandson, don't call my parents. I can't have them know that I'm in jail. The first thing you do, call the parents. Alienate your grandson. Call the parents. Because and again, once you're in it, you can't see it.
That is called the grandparent scam. It's not necessarily grandparents, it could be others as well, but it's typically the grandparents because it's one measure removed. And it's always the same thing. I was in an accident, I hit a woman, she's in surgery, I had a couple of drinks, and now I'm really in trouble. I need money immediately for bail and for a defense attorney. And then Chris and I worked with a gentleman from up in the Flathead, and I talked about this earlier, but this guy was a cagey man, 40 years in law enforcement. He was nobody's fool, and bred into him suspicion and caution. But when he got a call from somebody purporting to be his son, and his son in real life was a highway patrolman, said, "Dad," same thing, accident, pregnant woman, hospital, bail. He panicked. And see, these guys are really good too, because they disguise their voice by kind of sobbing through the conversation, "Dad," and so you really couldn't tell if it was your son's voice. And with AI, it's only going to get worse, but I don't want to go there. So he sobbed through it and then passed it off to somebody who was purporting to be the defense attorney. "Yeah, I need $17,000 immediately." And this guy, I wish I was like that. He had a safe in his house. He had $17,000 and a lot more. He followed the instructions that this person gave him without for a moment stopping to speak to his wife, without for a moment speaking to his daughter-in-law and saying, "Hey, is my son traveling like this said?" He didn't check. He just did what he was told to do. And they give specific instructions, so it sound kind of peculiar. Fold it up inside of a magazine, do all this preparation, ship it by FedEx to this address in Buffalo, New York. And he did it without hesitation. Authority figures, urgency, act immediately, send cash in a weird way. Same drill. And it was only after he put it in the FedEx and it was gone that he mentioned it to his wife. And then he called his daughter-in-law and said, "What are you talking about?" Well, in that case, it had a happy ending because some FedEx people on the other end were kind of on the ball and they intercepted it before the fraudsters got it, but that was highly unusual. He just could have thrown that $17,000, into the canyon. That's kind of the drill. I gave this presentation once in Belt, and somebody got a hold of the freshman football team's contact information, and somebody tried pulling that on some woman from Belt. She said, "Grandma, I got arrested after some bar fight," and said, "I'm in jail, I need money." He said, "You son of a bitch, you can stay there."
And I want to add into this a little bit. And I know it sounds really, but I think this is a serious consideration in our day and age. But obituaries contain an unbelievable amount of information, especially when you go down the family trees. Grandpa John died, married to Sally, Grandma Sally, and this is Paul and Susie, and their kids are these, and these. Well, you know the grandkid's name, and now you can call Grandma Susie 2 weeks later and tell her stuff. I think we need to reduce that information out there, and I do, because there's so much of that information. And I believe that a woman at Homes on the Range about 12 years ago, that's how they had that information, was from an obituary that was probably published online. And they're just going through it.
Like Mike mentioned too, it's a whole nother probably thing, but the AI is only
Yep.
gonna get worse and worse, and they talk about how they're teaching it to communicate, so it's just gonna scan real quick, find an obituary, it's like, what's, what's more of the family's name, you know? So that's where they, too, have
Garner
been
that information, and then in a New York second, I can tell you where they live, what their house is, I can tell you what their home phone number is probably, I can tell you, I can take pictures of their house, I can show you everything that you want to know about somebody, and it's all public information. And you give them just that little kernel, and it's amazing. I'm a law enforcement officer, that's what I do, I find people, and it's shocking.
Just a quick comment. We had a real estate transaction. So a fellow from Washington bought a piece of property up here in Winchester, $70,000 cash. And went to transaction, and he got, somebody got in the middle of the wire transfer,
Mhm.
and the lender sent, got the information to the title company where it's supposed to do the transfer. It went to a scammer, and lost 70,000 cash in a transaction on the real estate.
Yeah, that's a whole thing with real estate agents these days. They have special disclaimers about don't share this with anybody because they're going to intercept that payment. That's exactly what. And by the way, thank you for that story because you asked the question that person couldn't fake. If you have, a family safe word, or what was your first pet, or how many touchdowns did you score against Boulder, whatever, that kind of thing. This is the sweepstakes.
This is the sweepstakes one we were talking about earlier. And how we came across this is this gentleman was sending cash money through FedEx. And we found out later that he had sent about 6 different packages. This one particular package, they had seen him come in several times before. And this particular one, FedEx decided to hold it and call law enforcement because they thought it was a drug transaction. They thought he was doing shipping money for drugs. And so the narcotics unit down in that area seized that money, and then they started looking into it and realized this isn't a drug transaction, this is a scam. So that's when they contacted our office. And I went down and spoke with him, and like I said, when I learned of what it was, I got all the full details from FedEx, full details from the narcotics unit down there, and from local law enforcement. They all gave me kind of the details on it, and I went down and knocked on the door, spoke with his wife, and she said, he's in the shop. So I walked to the shop and I said, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is what I believe is going on, and I believe that you're a victim. And he said, no, I'm not. And I said, can you tell me what was going on then? And he's like, nope, I can't tell you. I don't want to tell you. And after quite a bit of talking with him, I finally got it out of him. Then he said, okay, I won Publishers Clearinghouse. In that manner, I won Publishers Clearinghouse. And I said, great. Did you enter Publishers Clearinghouse? No, I have not. How did you win if you've never entered? Question. And he said, well, I just did. What did they tell you you won? And they said, that amount of money, SUV, $7,000 for the remainder of his life every week. That's a great pull of money. What did you have to do to get that money and that SUV? Well, I had to pay the taxes up front, in cash. Really? How did you do that to start off with? Well, first, gift cards. They called me, said I had to do 2 $500 transactions through gift cards. How did that work? Well, go up to the store, get gift cards, call them on the phone, give them all the information, all the numbers on the back of that gift card, and give them the PIN number. Okay. What did you have to do after that? Next thing I had to do was get the checks, cashier's checks, and send those off. Okay. And then they told me to get cash from the bank. One of those transactions from the bank, he didn't have enough. So he had to clean out that one bank account and then go to another bank account in another town where he had another checking account and savings account and clean out another one to send in. He was upwards to $60,000 by the time this final cash payment went in, and it wasn't the final one. It was just one of more that they were going to get from him. And at this point, I told him, you realize that these people don't do this. And he was like, absolutely not. This is who it was. Well, if you look on Publishers Clearinghouse, the name that he used that they were talking to him was the actual people's name on the Publishers Clearinghouse website. They pulled everything off of Publishers Clearinghouse and used that information to tell him that he had won. This is what he had won, and that he just had to pay the taxes on it. And it took several trips and a lot of talking with him on the phone to convince him that this was not real, that this was a scam. In fact, I had to contact the dealership in Billings and have an agent go there and talk to the manager, get the manager's number so he could talk to him and tell him that this SUV is not there. He didn't believe me, and he said, no, it's not at that dealership, it's at this other dealership. Repeated that process again. The manager tells him, that vehicle is not here, we have nothing in your name. So, will you believe me that this is a scam? Nope, because this is what they've told me. And they were very adamant that this is what it was. And it took quite a bit of my convincing him and showing him that this is what it is. I went so far as printing off all Publishers Clearinghouse information, providing it to him and say, compare what they've sent you to what you have here. They even went on and took old information off of Publishers Clearinghouse, removed the photo that was the current president and these people that were supposed to show up at his house. And he told me, what was the weekend? He told me, Friday or Monday. He said, over the weekend on Monday, he said, they're going to show up at my house with the whole balloon ceremony and provide me with my check. And I says, if that happens, call me. I received no call. The only call I received was, tell me what I can do.
Okay, lessons from that. All the common playbook that you're already used to. I think they tested the waters to see how much this guy could come up with. They kept drawing it, kept drawing it, kept drawing it. There's a term that I think is so offensive, but it's a term that these people use to talk about all of us. They call it pig butchering. You fatten the pig and you slaughter the pig. I don't even like saying that out loud because it's so nasty. It treats everybody as this they're an object to be mistreated and then cast off. Like you have no human worth. You're less than a pig. But that's the point of it. You fatten the pig, you slaughter the pig. Okay.
It was also, it keeps them from having any human emotion because they're telling themselves that.
If they have a conscience, it probably wore out a long time ago.
I would put this little caveat in there. If they tell you you won a bunch of money and they want money, tell them to take the money out of the money you've won and then send me what I need. It's just.
Yeah.
The one part that I did miss on that is when they were saying, send this cash, I asked, what's the address? Was it to the IRS? Was it to the state? And they said, no, it's a private, this is the address. And when I look up the address on Google, it's a residence. Well, how are you going to pay taxes to a residence in another state? It didn't make sense. And I tried to explain that to them.
Okay, let's move it along. We already talked about that. Don't pay taxes up front. If you didn't sign up, if you didn't enroll, you didn't win. Okay. Romance scams perhaps are the most insidious, perhaps the most despicable of all of these, because not only do they take your money, they take your trust and your heart and every ounce of dignity that you've got. And it happens more often than you would guess, and the losses are usually staggering. Typically, it begins by somebody posting something on a dating profile or some sort of social media where you want to meet people. And these scammers just kind of flow through those, trolling and seeing if they get any bites. and somebody might send a little inquiry, and that inquiry might require a follow-up. And then typically what they do is you get off that legitimate site and you go off onto a side site. That way it's unmonitored and they can kind of isolate you from others. So go ahead. Typically what happens in these, and this might seem far-fetched, but it's not, instantly somebody's declaring their undying committed love forever. Way, way, way faster than that should happen. And typically they're saying, I'm in a distant place. I'm a US serviceman or woman. I work overseas, or the one that we're going to see in a sec, I work on an offshore oil rig. So I don't have internet. I don't have regular access. I can't talk to you all the time, but I love you. You're my soulmate, etc. And then they promise a lot of things but never deliver. Okay, let's go on. Would anybody agree with me that that's a nice looking woman? Is she really going to be having the hots for some old dude from Montana or elsewhere? Probably not. Probably not. But if you're lonely enough, you might think that she does. So let's go on.
So what happens is an older gentleman I spoke with, he was mid-70s.
Go back one.
And
Mid-70s. Now go ahead.
And
Are we following along here?
he had recently lost his wife. And so he was online in a chat room and looking to speak with somebody. He ended up speaking with a young lady who he believes to be a young lady. And they go on this conversation for quite a long time. They are meeting in chat rooms, having private chat conversations, and he asks, "Can I get a picture of you?" That was the picture that she sent. And in that conversation, or continuing on, she continues on with a bunch of emails, and they transfer emails.
So immediately she's saying, I'm overseas, but you're the person for me forever. I just need to get from overseas to you. And this whole thing is about working in Ghana and all this stuff, but it's worth reading this out loud because the English is not American English, and it always leads in one direction.
And the reason why is, to back up just a hair, she had told him that she was from the States. She was from Missouri, Kansas, something like that. I believe it was Kansas. She had said she was from Kansas, and she was an antiquities dealer. She went over to Ghana, and her antiquities got seized by customs. In order for them to get her antiquities out, she needed money. But she wanted to come back to the States, but she needed money.
So, I always dream about us having a beautiful life. Oh, that's touching. Isn't that touching? But it's just that we're having little problem with understanding when it comes to money issues. Yeah. Okay, next slide.
I think you should point out this is obviously not in the first. They did not learn.
Yeah, this is not an American
That should
English
be a
speaker.
Huge flare. If they can't write cognitively, it's
Yeah.
a problem.
But you know, if they're a younger age and you're, as you are,
Yeah,
You know,
we read
like-
through that. It's,
Yeah.
you
Terrible.
should be able to,
Yeah.
but you know, when you're in love, you
No.
don't see it, you read it.
Yeah, right. So you still have my love, and right now, all I need is to buy the plane ticket and some pocket money. It always goes in one direction. Always, always.
He had sent money for a plane ticket. He had sent money to get her antiquities out. She kept asking him, "Well, I need more money." "Well, I sent you money for a plane ticket." "No, I need more money. I had to spend that on something else. I need money for a plane ticket." And so he had done that repeatedly, sending her money, cash money for a plane ticket.
Okay. Anyways, we don't have to belabor this too much, but here's the part that becomes a little comical. The photographs that these people send to show you that they're legit. And here are some of the Ghana official documents where they just pasted her picture on some goofy document.
He had asked, "I don't believe you're real." He had mentioned that. "I don't believe you're a real person. I believe you're just taking me for money." So it started to move that way. And she said, "No, I'll send you proof."
Now, the thing that's important about this is they're silly documents, but all of the type is different than the document itself. And you notice on there, up at the top where it says Hannah, the font is different, it's much clearer, and it's all cattywampus. So it's just a really poor job, but okay, keep going. But here's a document we can trust, right? Right? United States passport. Well, if we look at it closer, it's a garbage image, except where they've typed in the false data. That's crisp and clear. Everything else is blurry and sloppy. But when it's your heart, maybe you kind of overlook that.
And so what we did is take that photo, run it through internet site, and search for her photo, and we come up with at least 3 or 4 other scams that people have used that photo with,
Yeah.
or a similar photo,
Okay.
but that person.
Now here's something Chris dug up, and I think it's hilarious. So let's go on to the next one. This dude, he looks like an upstanding guy. He's got a good smile. He has a head of hair, which is way overestimated, I will tell you. But he happens to have that, if you're into that sort of thing. So next picture. Oh, he's not a banker or an insurance salesman. He works in some sort of plant. Ah, it's an offshore oil rig. That, sure it is. Sure it is. And doesn't it look a little bit weird, like his head's pasted on that body? Let's go to the next one. Recognize that? Recognize that?
They must be brothers.
That one's really bad.
Yeah, this guy's head's enormous. What the heck? It's the same thing recycled again and again and again, but when you want proof, they send you a picture and go, oh, that's great. But how come we can't talk? I can't talk because I don't have the internet, but I'll write you a little message and I'll send it in a photograph. And so what did they do? The coffee cup's gone, go ahead. And I love you, Nancy's written instead. It's just a lame photocopy, or Photoshop.
And we searched for that photo and came up with all this information where people had been talking online. And some people say, oh, his name is Mark. Other people will say, no, his name is Jesse, and he's got children over here. And other people will say, no, his name is Steve. It's crazy because everybody's talking about this same photo, and he's got a bunch of different names.
Okay, enough of that fun. Tech support scams are another topic, one that people are apt to be targeted with. And you know that all of a sudden your computer does something crazy and you get a message, call this number, and then you got a virus. The only way you can get it unlocked is if you call us, click this button. Do not click that button. Do not call. If you do have a legitimate virus, seek some help from a local reputable computer deal, not the scammers online. The grandparent scam we already talked about.
That's a good one, though.
It is a good one.
Money maker.
Yeah. And this is just a list of other ones that I pay attention to this stuff. I'm kind of paid to do that. So anytime I get an internet or AARP or FinCEN or any of the federal stuff that says what's going on lately, I make a note of it. Medicare scams. That is common, where some outfit will contact you and say, do you need a back brace? You probably need a back brace. We can get you that for free. Knee brace? I bet your knee's hurt. Yeah. We'll get you that for free. All you need to do is give us your Medicare number. And then once they've got that, they can do a couple of things. They might send you some equipment you don't need and bill the government, so we all pay for it. Or they're just going to take that and create a bunch of fraudulent bills with your Medicaid number or Medicare number and collect the cash. Social Security, one of them is SSA OIG, that's Office of Inspector General. They claim to be law enforcement, government impersonator. If you don't act, what's going to happen? Arrest, bad things, frighten, urgency, send a gift card. They will not ever do that. The jury scam, we kind of alluded to that earlier. That's in-person couriers, a new twist on the old game, because some of them are getting bolder. Most of the time it's distant because that's safe, but there are some that are actually saying, we're going to send somebody to your house, and they do. That might not happen in Roundup. Utility scams, we're talking about phone bills, Northwest Energy, Mondac, whatever it is that you got. Um, work from home scams. All these come on, say, make $2,000 at home. All you have to do is shuffle this paper. I mean, I got that myself. Well, that sounds pretty good. We just need your information so you can sign you up as an employee. Send us your name, your address, and your social security number. So, you're going to be an employee. And then you'll be hired, and all you have to do is shuffle paper and you'll get paid. No, you're not. No. Work from home scams are just that, scams. Investment frauds. A lot of times they start with some innocuous little silly thing. Howdy, how you doing? And then you look at your phone, you go, who is this? And if you're not being cautious, you say, who is this? And they go, oh, I'm sorry, wrong number. But that camel's got his nose under the tent. And then they're going to try to engage you and try to keep that engagement going until you develop some sort of rapport, some sort of trust. And then they might let slip, oh, I just got back from a fabulous trip to Rome, ever since I started investing in cryptocurrency. Oh, did I tell you about that? I got a great tip on some investments. And then pretty soon they're trying to talk you into invest. And it's all the same thing. Some way to introduce themselves, to work their way into your life, to either frighten you or develop your trust. And once they've got that, they've got you.
And we are seeing that here locally. We've had a couple, and the wires are the big thing, but they're so trusting, and even with us starting to ask the questions, they're even getting harder for us to decide, is this really legit or not? But because they got in conversation, they got into this ring of things, and yeah, once you send a wire, it is pretty much a done deal, and such like that. Well, yeah, that
I got
customer.
on Sunday, a phishing text, and they're asking if I was the golf instructor, which I'm not. But yeah, I tell you, it's out there every.
I just wanted to hit exploitations a little bit because that's what Chris and I spend most of our time doing. And I don't view an exploitation any differently than I view a scam, except in this one respect. Exploitations start off with a trusting relationship. Scams have to develop that in some way. So you start off trusting your son, you start off trusting your caregiver, your lawyer. The scammers have to earn that somehow or other. But exploitations predominantly are people in your inner circle. Typically that's it. And this isn't this exploitation presentation so much, but we see so much of it, I just want you to know that. Powers of attorney, duress on a will, stuff like that. And this is misuse of a power of attorney. And this guy, his father was very wealthy and gave him a power of attorney. And since the old guy got up to be 90, 95 years old, and the son was impatient for him to die so he could collect his money, he just started writing checks for himself. And so he signed it, you can't probably see it, but it says POA. Just use his power of attorney. Simple. So when you write a power of attorney for somebody, it has to be somebody that you trust today and tomorrow. Okay.
And with that, banks don't always look at signatures anymore and such like that, but how important it is to look at your bank statements, that it is, we set them out for a reason. And you do have so much time after you get your statement for us to do something with it.
Okay, you want to take this one? All right, what are we going to do about it? Now we've got this problem. We all feel burdened with this fear that exploiters are around every corner, and that may be true. That doesn't mean we're powerless. And the first thing we do is help each other. And how do you do that? You maintain frequent contact with elders, and you listen. You listen, you're attentive. You observe changes in spending habits. If somebody's been frugal their whole life, and all of a sudden they got to have a boat and a trailer and a four-wheeler, you go, yeah, that's kind of out of the ordinary. And then all of a sudden they're keeping company with somebody that's strange. You think, oh, it doesn't add up. Again, it's not as common, happily, as the others. But if somebody all of a sudden has unexplained injuries, bruises, becomes withdrawn, socially isolated, it could be because they're being neglected, abused, or exploited. Those sort of things should not go unheeded. Abrupt changes to property ownership, wills, and such. long time ago, there was a thing in the paper in Helena, Letter to Dear Abby, and it had to do with somebody who was the beneficiary of a will, and this person was in constant contact with an elder, and all of a sudden the elder says, you're not in my will anymore. And this person wrote Dear Abby and said, what should I do? And Dear Abby says, oh, you should confront the person and just say, hey, what happened? And I wrote Dear Abby. And I said, yeah, I was wrong, Dear Abby. You missed it. And sometime later, Dear Abby published my response. And I said, if somebody has a practice for years and years and years, or if they have a estate plan for years and years and years, and unexpectedly it changes, ask the person, is there somebody new in your life who's influencing you? What she should have told that person is, consider reporting this to APS and let APS, Adult Protective Services, go interview them and say, is there something going on that we should know about? Is somebody pressuring you? Do you feel as though you're making your own decisions or getting bullied into things? And yeah, I'm a published author. I appeared in Dear Abby. So I got that.
This goes back to what the bank have been saying, as to knowing what and recognizing what your transactions have been over a period of time, and all of a sudden seeing something totally out of the ordinary.
Okay. And go ahead, please. Report to law enforcement. Just report it. It doesn't hurt. Oh, here's a guy. Tell him. Or, yeah, but he looks so severe. Like, man, this guy means business. Okay, you got the police. Or that dude. He dresses up pretty good. Report it. That's the way to go. And when you report, these are the kind of things that you should report. I mean, documents help. And why do documents help? Because honestly, keep going, please. A lot of law enforcement hasn't come around to the idea that stealing by a power of attorney is no different than stealing by busting a window with a crowbar. It's just a different way of getting in. And sophisticated law enforcement in our state have said crazy stuff like this. State law only allows for civil remedies. That is utterly wrong. And it's really, really wrong. So, as a victim or an advocate of a victim, it is not a civil problem. Shuffle it off, settle it in civil court. It could very well be a crime, and it should be investigated as a crime and prosecuted as a crime if the facts support it. So, let's just kind of hasten along.
There had been instances where
skip
we had received information that it was a civil.
Go ahead.
What they were told it was a civil.
Skip it.
And
Skip it.
I've inquired to the agency and said, hey, send me that case file, send me that report, let me know what's going on. And we have taken it up towards criminal, and Mike has prosecuted
Yeah.
these.
Adult Protective Services can be reached online or at that number. It's easy to find them. Just Montana Adult Protective Services, you get that. Okay? They're all over the state. They've got agents everywhere, and it doesn't take long. They're getting better. They're not perfect yet, but they're getting better.
Area 2 in round up here. Excellent.
Yeah. That's Department of Justice. Attorney General Austin Knudsen is serious about elder crimes. We've got an Office of Consumer Protection. That's me. You dial 444-1995. You don't get a voicemail. You don't get a secretary or an administrative assistant. You get me.
He holds many hats.
That's because of this. We also got a Medicaid fraud control unit that investigates crimes that occur that have some connection to Medicaid money. But there are other agencies as well. Go ahead, please. Commission on Securities and Insurance has a FAST team, Financial Abuse, some team. It's not response, because that'd be the wrong acronym. Especially, I may do that. The governor's office has area agencies and an ombudsman. There are a lot of government agencies that will assist you, and most of them send them to me and Chris.
Yes.
Okay, next. The feds, picture the feds there. They got all kinds of places, FTC, the IC3.
Earlier when I talked about places to report some of these scams that you have either received or know about, IC3.gov, as well as, do we have AARP up there? I don't believe so.
No.
They take this information online, as well as you can call them and say, hey, this is the scam that I know, and they will track that information. The feds will track that information and put out notices to law enforcement and other
Yeah.
agencies that this is the new trend that's going on, or this is what we're seeing in this area.
Yeah,
And that's
another
why they
reason to
want to
report
look
it.
at that.
Okay, let's hasten along. And so Chris and I charge people. Those common schemes, exploitations, keep going. That one's out of Richland County, exploitation. That one's out of Custer County. More exploitations, forgery, deceptive practices. Go ahead. Petroleum County, tampering with evidence, exploitation, forgery, keep going. Here's a case out of Carbon County where a guy abused a POA and mistreated his lifelong buddy. Scandalous, but convicted. Convicted. Okay? So, I mean, there is hope. It's difficult, but there is hope. And to wrap things up, this I thought was a good summary. They're going to be pretending to be an agency or an organization that you know of because that's the inroad. They're going to say there's a problem and they're going to rush you to some sort of urgent action. And they're going to tell you to pay in ways that they describe that are not the ordinary way that we do business. Okay, one more. So, don't panic, don't react, don't go on impulse, like the grandparent scam guy that told me I acted on hardwired instinct to protect my son. Hang up or ignore him. Protect your money, say, no, I'm not giving it to you. Protect your personal information, I'm not giving it to you. If you need to call back, get the real number for Northwest Energy and call that. Don't click on the one that they gave you. Don't scan their QR code. Spread the word. And that's what me and Chris are doing at Sheriff's invitation. We're here to tell you. Now you be ambassadors and go out and tell everybody you know.
Thank you guys for coming. Great information. Well, I mean, if it does not affect your account at First Security Bank or at Valley, even if it doesn't affect us, and you have questions, call us. We see this stuff all the time. We can help with Visa credit card things. We can help with all kinds of stuff, even if it doesn't affect our bank,
Thank you.
because we see that. We're part of the community. We want to be a part of the community. That's what we're a resource. So don't be afraid to talk to us. I had a customer call me at my home at 8 o'clock at night a week ago because somebody was trying to get there to scam her on a credit card deal. And she trusted the bank to know the answer.
One other thing too, if you are a victim of a scam and you recognize it, report it immediately.
Immediately.
The bank, report it to me. Both President Dutton and I have 2 success stories. President Dutton was able to get a wire transfer back,
The wire leaves, it leaves, and we got one back.
but it was quick. And this is something that has to be quick. We had somebody get taken for a lot of money here on a PayPal con. She came and talked to me. I knew how PayPal worked. I was able to get hold of the right person, and they were able to look at the accounts, and it hadn't actually transferred yet, and they got it back. So if you get scammed or getting scammed, and you at some point realize it, don't just sit there and
Yeah.
fester in it.
Don't dither. Act.
Yeah.
The minute the light goes on, you need to start talking to us.
Yeah.
Because the quicker we hear from you, the better chance we have of stopping the transaction, getting the money back, or at least get in the right hands of the investigators to start that process so that there's a chance to get it back. If we don't hear about it for a week or 10 days, it's gone.
And just to take anything away from here, somebody asks you for cash immediately, a gift card immediately, or a wire transfer immediately, it's a scam. Just 100%.
I'm pretty sure that if Valley, First Security, and the Sheriff's Office got together, we could add up over $100,000 that's left this community in the last 12 months. It's real, it's happening right here in Roundup. Be very, very careful.
And please grab some cookies on your way out the door.
They're free.